The story unfolds in a high-stakes corporate environment where power, status, and emotional restraint dictate every interaction. Logan Carter, a man in his mid-30s who has learned the harsh lessons of social inequality through a painful past marriage, works as the personal secretary to Olivia Bennett, the young, brilliant, and fiercely guarded CEO of Howard & Bennett Capital. Operating across 4 floors of a downtown glass tower, Olivia runs her firm with cold precision. She is younger than most of the male executives and negotiators she faces, leaving her no room to display softness, which she knows would immediately be weaponized against her as weakness. Logan has spent 3 years as her shadow, learning the exact weight of her silences, anticipating her needs, and managing the relentless chaos of her schedule. Somewhere along the way, his professional competence quietly transformed into something much deeper and more dangerous. He fell deeply in love with her. Haunted by his past marriage, where a vast gap in financial standing and social status ultimately eroded everything, Logan vowed never to stand on the wrong side of that divide again. Yet, every single day, he found himself standing precisely there, nursing a hidden affection he deemed entirely impractical. The turning point, the investor gala, the fragile status quo, shatters during a high-profile evening gathering of the city's elite investors and corporate partners. Olivia had insisted she could handle the event alone, but Logan, driven by a mixture of professional instinct and quiet protectiveness, attended anyway. He watched from the periphery as powerful men circled her, turning polite toasts into subtle endurance tests designed to gauge her limits. Refusing to participate would mark her as fragile, so Olivia endured, smiling through the burning sting of alcohol. By the end of the evening, her control began to slip and her steps grew unsteady. As the final partners drifted away, Logan crossed the room to find her standing near the tall windows, looking uncharacteristically lost. When she admitted she had overdone it, he stepped in without hesitation. However, emerging into the lobby presented an immediate crisis. 2 photographers and several lingering business partners waited near the glass doors. Carrying an incapacitated CEO out the main entrance would invite tomorrow's sensational headlines, instantly cracking open her hard-earned reputation. Refusing to let her image be compromised, Logan bypassed the front exit, guiding her through the service entrance with an arm firmly around her waist. He brought her to his modest, unglamorous apartment 15 minutes away, the only safe place where she could disappear until the alcohol wore off. Safely inside his apartment, Logan lowered Olivia onto the couch, retrieved his good blanket, and tucked it gently around her shoulders. Intending to give her complete privacy while he took the chair across the room, he instead sat and watched her sleep. Stripped of her daytime armor, her face looked tired, unguarded, and profoundly human. Believing she was deeply asleep, the words Logan had kept locked away for 3 years finally broke loose. In a low, steady voice, he confessed everything to the quiet room: his long-standing love for her, his painful memories of a previous relationship divided by class, and his firm resolve to keep his distance, bury his feelings, and ask for nothing in return. He vowed to remain a reliable shadow behind her desk, preferring a lifetime of being useful over a single honest conversation that might cause her to look at him with disappointment. What Logan did not know was that Olivia was not fully asleep. Dragged toward consciousness by the alcohol, yet trapped behind heavy eyelids, she heard every single word. She absorbed the love, the exhaustion, and the deep-seated fear in his voice. Rather than reacting, her survival instinct kicked in. She kept her breathing slow, her eyes shut, and pretended to remain asleep. She needed time to process a revelation that completely upended her understanding of the man she trusted most. The morning after and the first lie morning arrived gray and unhurried. Logan busied himself in the kitchen, preparing breakfast and coffee to build a normal wall between himself and the vulnerability of the previous night. When Olivia woke up, sitting up barefoot in her ruined evening dress, the question in her eyes preceded her words, "Did anything happen between us?" Panicked that the honest answer would destroy their professional relationship and banish him from her life, Logan chose self-preservation. He lied, telling her that nothing happened, that she simply slept on the couch while he took the chair to protect her from the paparazzi outside. Olivia absorbed the flat delivery, masking her complex emotions behind a cool exterior. Driving her back to her building, Both returned to the office as though the night had never occurred. While Logan felt a guilty relief that his secret appeared buried, Olivia was left carrying two massive, conflicting truths. She remembered his confession word for word, and she recognized why he lied. Rather than dismissing it, she resolved to test the reality of his feelings. Having been burned repeatedly by people who performed affection simply to gain access to her wealth and status, she decided to watch patiently, keeping her own silence while letting Logan close the distance. As the weeks passed, Olivia subtly increased her reliance on Logan, pulling him into deeper strategic discussions and looking to his judgment beyond mere logistics. Yet every overture from Olivia only heightened Logan's internal terror. Convinced that she remembered nothing and that his confession was safely locked away, he interpreted her warmth as mere executive reliance and doubled down on his emotional restraint. The old fear of crossing social boundaries paralyzed him anew. The tension escalated with the introduction of Preston Wade, a man born into elite old money who fit seamlessly into Olivia's family expectations. Backed by her mother and the approval of her social circle, Preston began appearing regularly at charity galas and private lunches. To Logan, Preston represented concrete proof of everything he lacked a suitor whose standing matched Olivia's, making their union a natural corporate and social merger. Convinced that a woman of Olivia's stature inevitably belonged with someone like Preston, Logan's quiet hope withered further. However, Olivia found Preston utterly dull and entirely beside the point. She humored her family's matchmaking efforts while measuring Preston against the memory of a low voice speaking in the dark, finding Preston profoundly slight by comparison. Realizing that Logan was pulling away even further to the point of drafting a formal transfer request to another division to remove himself from her daily orbit, Olivia understood her patient observation had run out of time. If she waited a moment longer, her caution would cost her the only genuine man she had ever known. The final confrontation and resolution before Logan could formally submit his transfer paperwork, Olivia called him into her office and firmly shut the door. Standing by the window with the city skyline behind her, she stripped away all executive command, revealing a raw, vulnerable honesty. "I know you're planning to transfer. Before you file anything, I need to ask you something, and I need you to not lie to me this time. Did anything happen between us that night in your apartment?" When Logan instinctively retreated behind his defensive wall, repeating the lie that nothing happened, Olivia shattered the illusion completely. She recited his midnight confession back to him verbatim, his years of hidden love, his painful lessons on social standing, his promise to bury his feelings, and his decision to stand behind her in silence. Stunned into absolute silence, Logan braced for the inevitable backlash, certain that his boundary crossing would result in his immediate dismissal. Instead, Olivia confessed her own side of the story. She explained how she had stayed silent that morning because she needed to test whether his love was genuine or merely a fleeting alcohol-induced impulse. She revealed that Preston Wade was nothing more than an empty placeholder pushed by her family, and that she had nearly lost the only man who truly mattered to her out of sheer fear. When Logan finally voiced his lingering fear about the social gap and the damage a scandal could inflict on her career, Olivia crossed the remaining distance between them, declaring that she wanted the man who protected her out of genuine care rather than the man who merely looked good in a photograph. Shedding the heavy discipline of 3 years, Logan confessed that every word he spoke that night was true. Rather than rushing into a reckless romance, they forged a mature, grounded agreement. They would keep their working relationship strictly professional within the office walls to protect Olivia's hard-earned empire, while building a genuine life together underneath. Logan promptly took his transfer request out of his jacket pocket and dropped it unfiled into the shredder. In the end, the rigid barriers of rank, social standing, and fear dissolved, replaced by mutual trust, respect, and the courage to speak the absolute truth out loud. Stepping back into the rhythm of Howard Bennett Capital after that morning in her office felt different, yet wonderfully steady. The physical space between them across the conference tables and desks remained unchanged because it had to remain unchanged. To the rest of the 4 floors, Logan was still the sharp, intuitive personal secretary who kept the schedules running without a flaw, and Olivia was still the unyielding CEO whose decisions moved millions. But the underlying current had completely shifted. The fear that had kept Logan pacing his apartment at night was gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable certainty. They had dismantled the walls not by tearing them down entirely, but by learning how to open the doors they had kept bolted for years. Olivia found herself smiling more often behind closed doors, though her formidable public composure remained as sharp as ever. She no longer needed to test whether Logan's loyalty was genuine because the truth had already been laid bare in the most vulnerable way possible. Whenever their paths crossed during high-stakes meetings or quiet moments between investor calls, a brief glance or a subtle nod was all it took to communicate what the rest of the room could never possibly guess. They had achieved the ultimate balance, protecting the professional empire Olivia had poured her life into while quietly building a genuine, honest partnership beneath the surface. Of course, the outside world did not simply vanish because they had reached an understanding. Preston Wade still occasionally appeared on the periphery of Olivia's social calendar, backed by the polite persistence of her mother and the expectations of elite old money. But where those encounters used to carry a sense of inevitable pressure, they now felt entirely hollow to Olivia. Whenever Preston spoke of corporate mergers, social status, or family legacy, Olivia simply nodded politely, completely immune to the charm offensive. She had looked behind the polished facade of suitable matches and discovered that they lacked the very thing that mattered most: real, grounded human connection. Logan, too, handled the reminders of the social divide with a new perspective. When he saw Preston's name pop up on the daily itinerary, he no longer felt the old stinging resignation that told him he didn't belong. He knew now that Olivia was choosing him not out of convenience or shared social standing, but because of who he was when no one else was watching. He didn't need to wear a famous last name or inherit a multi-million-dollar trust to be worthy of her respect and affection. The quiet dignity of his work and the depth of his character were more than enough. As the weeks blended into months, the secret they shared evolved from a heavy burden into a source of quiet strength. They knew that someday, when the timing was entirely right and completely under their own control, they would let the rest of the world see them as they truly were, not as a scandalous headline or a corporate mismatch, but as two equals who had found each other against all odds. Until that day arrived, they were content to live in the quiet truth they had forged together. Logan continued to anticipate Olivia's needs before she even had to voice them, but now he did so with the warm knowledge that he was valued not just as an indispensable asset, but as the person she loved. Olivia continued to run her glass tower empire with brilliant precision, but she no longer had to carry the crushing weight of it all completely alone. She had a partner who stood beside her in the shadows and walked with her into the light, proving that true love isn't measured by where you sit in the world, but by the courage to speak the absolute truth when everything is on the line.